We're going to open the meeting tonight with an approval of the last meeting minutes from June 23rd. As always, all the minutes are kept in the share. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to read them. Can I get either can I get a motion to approve last month's minutes? And keep in mind, everybody's muted right now, so I can't hear anybody if they make motions.
I'll make a motion to approve last month's minutes.
Thank you, Kevin. Can I get a motion, a second? Maybe I can second it. I'll second it. So we're going to open tonight with public forum. Usually we have at least one or two guests. Tonight we don't. I was hoping that one of the people that had been reaching out to us regularly from Pine Street would join us, a woman named Brigida. She had reached out originally to Ian a couple months ago. Ian forwarded her email to me, and I've been going back and forth corresponding with her about the subject of Pine Street and what can be done there. I'm going to share some of her thoughts later on in the evening. I've got a deck with some of the agenda items in it around the Pine Street traffic calming, and Ian's going to chime in on a couple on a similar subject as well. Her comments, as well as some other people who I've talked to on Pine Street, all echo the same thing. Brigida's comments actually are getting, they seem more and more acute as time goes on. It seems like the amount of through traffic, the amount of truck traffic that is using Pine Street, which she's a resident, and she's a long-term resident of the village, not just a resident of Pine Street, has been pretty significant. So hopefully we can get her on for the next meeting. I've extended an invite to her previously. So we'll start off then, agenda item 3, mission statement discussion. I'm going to shift over to host disabled participant screen sharing. Ian, if you're listening, if you could open screen sharing for me. Otherwise I can certainly do this without the visuals, but it might be a little bit easier if I do. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Let's see, we're going to go to here. Okay, can everybody see agenda items? Thumbs up, great. So we'll start with the first one, mission statement. This is picking up where Jerry's great work left off a few meetings ago. I'm proposing 2 mission statements. Oh, wait, it bears noting here. Yet again, here we are. We're a meeting with 3 members, so we don't have a quorum. We need 4 members to cast official votes. So I'll walk you through this, and then we'll get a quorum either via email with everybody on it or at the next meeting. These are the 2 mission statements that have boiled down Jerry's work and a couple other and some of the work that I was doing down to. I'll forward this deck to everybody after the call so you can weigh in on these. But these are basically 2 different approaches, one of which they both certainly represent Jerry's work on this. The top one is, I think, where he was kind of coalescing around. The first one, the Bristol Bicycle and Pedestrian Action Committee encourages, enhances, and promotes walking and biking in Bristol through the creation, advocacy, and guidance of initiatives that make the town's roads, sidewalks, and other pathways safer and easier for walkers, runners, cyclists, and other non-motorized users to utilize. That's kind of a collaborative effort between he and I. The second one is one that he actually took from another of the Vermont towns and modified it slightly. It's a little bit more succinct, but in being succinct, it obviously doesn't cover as much ground. The Bristol Bicycle and Pedestrian Action Committee educates and influences public policy for the safe accommodation of cycling and walking for transportation, commuting, recreation, individual, and environmental health. Both of these are, I think, great. I would feel good about putting either of these in front of the select board to give a thumbs up or thumbs down as far as whether whether either of them evidences or references or represents the charter that they've tasked us with. I will forward that along. Ian, good evening.
Remember that it's the Bristol Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, not action.
Apologies. I had action in there. Apologies. I will make note of that. Let's see. So we will stop the share for a moment. Does anybody have anything to say on mission? Obviously, I'm going to forward that to the broader group, but. Okay, next, the co-chair opening as noted, and the board member opening as well. I've mentioned that I've reached out to a couple people to join these last two meetings. Nobody has taken us up on those. I'm going to continue to ask people, suggest that people join. I hope you all do the same. We're obviously, with being down on numbers, that reduces our chances of having a quorum on meetings like this considerably by, by double-digit percentages. So please, if you know anybody, reach out to them themselves, or certainly forward their names and contact information, and I'll reach out to them with information on the group. Next, Pine Street and North Street traffic calming, inclusive of the stop sign initiative. Ian, maybe it's good before I show the work that I've done on this. I know you have something that came up in a recent select board meeting. It'd be great if you could share that with us on this.
Sure. So it was a couple meetings ago. We were talking about the cost of the striping for North Street and Pine Street. And as we sort of talked about that more with Eric Coda, and he was under a particular deadline or wanted to get that moving with the company that's going to do it, the question came up and there was more discussion by the board of the actual execution of this on Pine Street. North Street isn't an issue because of the size and because of the type of striping that's being done, but Pine Street is considerably different. And so there was concern by a number of the members that by going ahead with this right now as it was, that it would cause great confusion to motorists on that street. And I say I have to agree with that. As much as I want this, and I'm a big supporter, we do need to do it correctly, and so it doesn't become a huge mess. Another part of that was that the board was not confused, but I think didn't realize that they had given the go-ahead to do it through the ad hoc committee. I think maybe some members felt that it was going to be presented again by your group,
Yes,
and then approval being done. And I think that's still the case.
100%.
We've been doing that and updating, but I think once board members started to think about what happens on Pine Street, the type of traffic that happens, they started to get a little bit worried about such a huge change, especially without any outreach to the public in any way. So that was the main thing. And as I said, I agree with that. It is a big change. Lincoln has a road, but it's probably, or I know it's far less traveled than this road. It was implemented a number of years ago, and it's had time for people to understand it. I think with Pine, because you have traffic from the Public Works Department, which contains lots of heavy vehicles, you also have trash pickup, which a lot of residents use on a Saturday morning, a lot of two-way travel there. And you have a number of different sized trucks, either from Bristol Bakery Wholesale or Martin's. I know that they use that as a turnaround. And also Vermont Farm Table. You have a lot of really big sort of semi-truck travel there. And so to introduce this without sort of public outreach, I think could be really confusing. And I don't want to get into a case where cars feel that they can't cross over these dash lines because they don't understand them, and you have cars head to head or something like that, or if you have people walking and using those lines and people crossing into them, or so that was the main concern that the select board raised. I think they're in full support of it, but it's just how it's presented to the public, and how we implement it, and also how we monitor it to see how it's being used.
Got it. First of all, thank you for communicating all that to us. Mary Ann, Kevin, do either of you have any comments on this at this point in time? Because certainly the subject of outreach, it has been mentioned a couple times, so that's not surprising to hear. But does anybody have any thoughts on it right now, basically based on Ian said. Kevin?
Yes, I think the education piece is important, so I agree. With some of my recent driving through Burlington, Montpelier, other towns where there are multiple lanes for pedestrians and bicyclists, and there's this type of pavement markings that we're referring to. The next quick thought is how to communicate it to the town. And I don't know if it'd be something that would need to be warned, put into the Addison Independent. Again, I'm just thinking off the top of my head. We've got the primary coming up. It's really short, but in November, a little more long distance of a time frame. That could be a place to communicate what this is going to look like. Locomotion already has PowerPoints, right, that have some of this education. So that could be something that's put out onto Front Porch Forum, or again, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, so that people can understand that it's still two-way traffic, but it's emphasizing the importance to allow the safety for bicyclists and pedestrians, because there aren't sidewalks and there aren't bike lanes.
Right.
So my last thought is, with the select board, are they still supportive, or did it come up, I guess, to put in the stop signs on Pine Street?
I don't think that hasn't been presented to the select board yet, and that was another question I had regarding that. But I believe, well, I can't say, because I know that the sidewalks or the striping is supported, and also the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit is definitely supported. I think Joel's a big proponent of that, and he's willing to put that. I think that's going to be on the next agenda. He's actually just going to propose, and as an agenda item, just to have the speed reduced on all village streets to 25. And I would second that. Even though I'm the chair, I can still do that if no one else does. So we can see if that'll go through. I know that Michelle and perhaps Speaker might have issues. I don't think Darla would have any issues. But we can see. So that's going ahead. The stop sign is another thing. It's never come before us. We're sort of waiting on you to sort of present that. But I do have a thought regarding that, and maybe it's something where instead of the striping for a single wide lane that two-way traffic can use as being the first thing, perhaps a presentation and a suggestion of implementation of stop signs on the street. Maybe that's the first thing that you do. So you start to get traffic going a lot slower on that street. And then the second phase of it would be doing the striping and doing the single or the two-way traffic on a single large open lane. Because at least that way you've got speed that's reduced, and maybe it's only just for a couple months. Put the stop signs in, you look at it and you sort of monitor for a couple months, see how people are using the street, see if speeds are reduced. You can work with the Bristol Police Department on that, and Bruce Nason, Chief Nason. But that might be something where you could start small steps with that, get that traffic and speed reduced for vehicles, and get that understanding that there are new stop signs here, and then implement the striping for that single lane, or that dual purpose lane.
I've actually got that in a couple slides, so we can actually, as a group, we can look through what would be roughly the proposal, and certainly we'll edit accordingly based on what you just told us, Ian. So just this was some context for what's been done up to this point as far as due diligence and research. Jerry again spearheaded so much of this, and then both educated us and passed on all the information, reviewed best practices and suggestions, and all the material from other communities, from local motion, from a variety of different sources. Even the Tri-Town bicycle loop had information that was very either directly complementary or pretty much overlapped a lot of what we were seeing in some of the other material. Second, we've walked and measured and observed Pine Street numerous times, visited various communities, including Burlington was the one that I spent the most time in, and walked the entire length of Pine Street, which has virtually every flavor of this type of line and other types of lines on it. The majority of which would vastly overserve what we're trying to do on Pine Street. Therefore, obviously Pine Street in Burlington is a much more complex thoroughfare there. But that said, it's interesting to see how in certain areas it is effectively exactly what we're talking about, which is an overall like kind of a share the lane style demarcation. The only difference being that Pine Street in Burlington obviously has always been a street that's divided by a yellow line. So traffic's been demarcated there very differently than our own Pine Street. Visited South Lincoln Road in Lincoln. I've got some photos of this just so everybody sees it. It is obviously a much wider road, and B, as Ian notes, the Lincoln roads are certainly less traveled, but it is a road all the same without a center dividing line. And so this has a kind of a practical kinship with what we were thinking as far as something that, and you'll see this in a second, something that would be less invasive. It's got a design language that people are familiar with as far as the rules of the road and how to deal with broken lines. Also took community input from a number of Pine Street residents, some of which you're going to see on a slide coming up. So quick reference, here's a couple shots of the South Lincoln Road in both directions. I measured these because in a previous meeting, in fact, in a couple meetings, it came up, some of the best practices we saw had these pedestrian and bike lanes being 5 feet wide. And as we know, at its maximum, our Pine Street is only 22 feet wide. So you're talking about basically reducing the center to 12 feet, which if that was an actual traveled lane, you'd have to have a sign on it that says lane width narrows to 12 feet. So it just so happens that the South Lincoln Road lines are 3 feet from the edge of the pavement to the very inside of the painted line, not the outside. One other shot here, you can see a car coming down the road. So the suggestions that I was going to bring to the group, and then that we would then, as Ian notes, bring to the select board, which we can of course amend, are to use broken white lines. We had discussed everything from art in the lines. We had looked at green painted lanes and things of that nature. After looking at any number of different things, I think the least invasive and least confusing would be a classic broken white line here. It's the kind of thing that somebody's not going, if it's not solid, obviously it telegraphs that it can be crossed. As noted, 3 feet from the inside edge to the pavement edge. I think that's the minimum we can really get away with. That's going to be tight. Like two people walking next to each other don't walk 3 feet away from each other. They typically are going to walk a little bit farther away, but this at least gives, gives people, especially cyclists and pedestrians who are walking alone or in line, it'll at least denote some safe space for them. Obviously, the lane width is going to vary slightly as the road width is variable. Definitely more variation towards the town, from the town garage to Maple Street, and less variation in width from Maple Street to North. Another suggestion is, just as was noted earlier, stop signs we would love to propose, especially based on commentary from Pine Street residents, inclusive of but not exclusive to Brigida. She's just been the most passionate and vociferous. But we would love to propose stop signs on all Pine Street intersections. Start there and see what the select board would approve, because there will be nothing that calms traffic more on Pine Street than having stop signs on it. I mean, yes, broken line, dividing lines for pedestrian lanes and bike lanes will absolutely do something there, but stop signs will actually reduce people's ability to go. They're already driving over the town speed limit. They're already driving over 30 there, and 25 miles an hour at every single stop sign at every single intersection will greatly reduce that. Brigitte also suggested no through traffic signs at both ends. I think if we had stop signs along the route, that is going to discourage a lot of the through traffic anyway, because suddenly it won't be the quickest / shortest route from one corner of town to the other. And then, as noted, that's going to get brought up, obviously, the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. So, Ian, this obviously is something that we can scrub and make, do whatever we can with it to make sure that we're doing this in stages. It would be terrific if we were able to suggest the stop sign thing first in tandem with any decision on the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit.
I sent you a link. So this is there's a scoping study being done by Du Bois and King for Munsell Avenue in terms of a sidewalk there. So this is a draft of what they've presented. And not that you need to do something as detailed as this, but anything that you can do that's visual is going to help the select board, I think, approve something or at least have a much better understanding. So the way that they've presented this is obviously very detailed because they were paying them, a chunk of money to do this.
Yep.
But I think you do need something like this. Like you can have your bullet points, but if you can demonstrate, especially with what Kevin said about other streets, not just Lincoln, because Lincoln is a different animal, I think, to this street just because of the amount of traffic.
Yep.
Have examples from other larger cities like Burlington, and show the green, show the broken line striping, things like that, and just so you're able to demonstrate. And I think all that'll help, especially not just presenting to the select board to get approval, but also just to present to the public so they have an understanding. And the same should be said for the stop signs. I'm willing to help because I can Photoshop stuff and mock up things. So, if you're proposing at every intersection there's a stop sign, I think visually, by having that and mocking up a sign where it might be, a position, and where it would be from each direction, I think will help a great deal to sort of present that. I do have a feeling, though, that a stop sign at every intersection might be met with some hesitation. So sort of pick and choose your top ones. I think initially when we had conversations, it was at Maple. There'd be 2 stop signs there either side, and then I think the other one was Munsell. But you could also do Liberty as well. But I know that with traffic coming out of Public Works, that they might hesitate with that. You might receive pushback from the Public Works Department in terms of the movement of their vehicles.
One thing that I think we have to ask, it's probably on a couple people's minds here, is given that we inherited the work of the ad hoc committee and the names of these initiatives, we did not decide that the name of this particular initiative was the Pine Street Traffic Calming Initiative. Is there any kind of leaning towards I don't want to read between the lines, but are some people, and note the Public Works Department, how friendly are we intending on making Pine Street to continued traffic? And the ease with which traffic, motorized traffic flows down Pine Street. And please don't read that question as we're trying to make it impossible for cars to drive. But it sounds like some people might be thinking, well, no, Pine Street is great because it is unimpeded from one end to the other.
No, I don't get that at all in terms of a sense from the select board. I think it's just something that's an area that the town or other people haven't really considered changing. I mean, there's always been push for sidewalks down there to make it safer for pedestrians to walk, but the sheer cost associated with that, you also have on top of that, you have a very old water system that needs to be replaced, which will be perhaps a multi-tiered kind of project. And so putting in sidewalks as well as replacing all the pipes that are under the road for that entire length of road is a huge cost, and you can't do one before the other because you're just tearing up stuff then. So I think initiatives like this, where you're using paint instead of a huge amount of concrete to be able to change the look and feel of that road and signs, I think is a really good positive way to do that. As for in terms of traffic, there are always going to be people that are in favor of having it left how it is. You get a nice run down there if you're going to the dump, and being able to dump your trash on a Saturday. Public Works obviously have a number of vehicles going in and out of there of various sizes, and I'm sure enjoy just being able to go down without having to stop at every intersection. Having said that, we are in a village, and we do promote Bristol as a pedestrian and bicycle and walking friendly village, and a big part of that is having safe areas. And I think a number of people, including people who want the car traffic to remain the same, as well as residents and walkers and bikers that want it to change, recognize that it is a dangerous road. A lot of people use that, and something needs to be done at some level. And so I do think that you'll meet with the greatest success if you do it in pieces and you can tell a good story about why you're doing this, and get your narrative right in terms of why you're doing these things. You're not trying to impede traffic, but you're trying to do this. And I think you've started to do that with this work, with the ad hoc and with this continued committee. I think you're doing that. It's just sort of the next level of how to present it. And part of that is presenting to the select board, because they're going to give the approval to put stop signs in or not. I think the line striping has been approved and the select board is expecting that to happen. It's just, they got a little bit hesitant actually committing to it and thinking like, oh, okay, no one knows about this. If we suddenly, like, you woke up the next day and you had these striped lines on your street, or you started to use it and you knew nothing about it, you know, they were just really concerned, especially, you know, any number of drivers could go down that road and might be very confused. So at least if you do sort of due diligence in terms of reaching out, presenting this information to the public, and you have time for that to sort of, you know, soak in to the consciousness of people around there, I think you'll meet with greater success.
Got it. Great. Thank you
That's
for all
a
that.
question as to the procedure. When you present to the select board, are you essentially presenting it to the public as well at the same
Yes.
time? Okay, so the
Yes.
select board doesn't have to do another dog and pony show to state what's happening.
No, I mean, because the select board has the final say and makes the vote on whether the stop signs can go in or striping can happen, we would make that decision. And obviously the public has voted us in to make those decisions, but we hope that the public are watching the meetings to be able to be informed. We try to have as much outreach as possible to let people know when meetings are happening. Val, the town administrator, has a huge email list, so it goes out to a lot of different organizations and to individuals. Having said that, our attendance is still pretty low, or very low in terms of meetings. People just don't have the time, but it is recorded by NEAT and it's on YouTube. So it is an accessible public document, but we wouldn't do an additional sort of outreach. We would expect your committee to do that if you felt that was needed. And we might suggest that. We may say, look at that, look at all the imagery, agree with the stop signs, but say, okay, we'd love to see this presented and have a little bit more public outreach before it's implemented, just so we're setting up the expectations of what's going to happen.
Mhm.
Got it.
Okay.
Any other comments on this for this evening? Okay, again, thank you very much, Ian, for explaining all of that to us. I think we've got good action steps moving forward. We'll look to move quickly on visuals so that we can get on the select board's agenda sooner rather than later. And I'll reach back out to everybody about this as soon as possible. I can start in this coming week on the presentation. Yeah,
and I'm happy, as I said, I'm happy to help if you take photographs and want to have a stop sign put in. If you need help with that, I'm happy to do that, because I support all these projects and want to see this happen. And I do believe in the stop signs. Anything, just because I'm a walker, especially with smaller children, anything I can do to make cars go slower. Like I'm not against preventing cars from going down certain roads, but if they can be nice and slow as they go past me, I'm all for that.
Yes.
And I think other select board members support that too, even those who don't live in the village. But I would, as I said, I would recommend starting perhaps with the stop sign initiative and presenting your findings and your suggestions to the board for that particular matter, as well as sort of reiterate that we're still working on the striping and we've heard your concerns about implementation of that without prior knowledge of it happening. One other addition to that, and this is connected to the Munsell Avenue study, there seems to be, unfortunately, there isn't a lot of support even by residents on that road for a sidewalk. We're still continuing with the scoping study, because when you do a scoping study, it can greatly help your case if you're go ahead with a project and want to apply for grant funding. But it seems like the large majority of people, even residents who do support a sidewalk, don't wish to keep the road as is. So one of my thoughts when we've sort of been going through this project was maybe Munsell is a street that we could try with the striping. It's a smaller, less traveled street. There is still a good amount of traffic, not as much as Pine, because it's not that long shot, but maybe that's something you'd want to try first. So it's something to think about. You know, it does have a couple stop signs, so the traffic isn't tremendously fast, but this could be an opportunity to be able to start with a smaller street, demonstrate that it works, demonstrate that people are using it, it's safe, and then be able to implement that onto Pine. So just
Great
a
idea.
thought for you going forward.
Great idea. We will, yeah, I think we're looking at doing all of this in steps, so that will be one of them. Kevin.
I was looking at the document that you sent us, Ian. The maps that are in there, are those town property? There's so much that's on Google Maps, Google Earth. Could we use those? What's
We will-
yes, I
yeah.
think, let's
how,
see.
how legal? I guess I'll just be blunt about it. You know, we don't want to break copyright laws, but it's pretty easy to take a Google image and drop in a stop sign on the top of it to show it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's street view. I know you said go take pictures. That's basically
Right.
the same. I
Sure.
could walk down the street and take pictures.
Right.
So,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, for presentations like this, the fact we're a municipality and, I don't think it's an issue. A lot of the maps that they have, I think, are pulled from GIS sources. And we can get those through the Addison County Regional Planning Commission. We can get any kind of detail. There's also websites that you can go to, like the Vermont GIS, where you can download images. So yeah, that's absolutely. I tend to just take my own photographs because if I want it at a particular season, I've got it, and then it's just I'm working from a higher resolution file. And these are for mockups that I've done for other things, like this.
Yep.
But yeah, any way you can in terms of grabbing an image. And being able to add what you need to it to sort of present. But I would say, they have a combination of photographs from the street as well as satellite level. And so I think presenting both of those, where it's very clear in terms of what you're thinking about, where each stop sign would be, because obviously you need one on each side of Maple and each side of Munsell to do the stop sign. Just making sure that you have all the detail you need when you're presenting, so we can really see, what's going to happen.
We will do that. We will be visual rich with the next steps.
And you can always present to me, and just talk to me about it before presenting to the select board. I'm happy to always sort of comment on that. And I'm representing me. I'm not presenting the entire board. Everyone's going to have their own decisions, but I do feel like, I tend to be more involved with other committees. And so I'm happy to sort of, voice opinions at any time. So just
Great.
let me know.
We will take you up on that. Thanks for offering.
Okay. I'm going to hop off now, but you'll still see it's on since I'm logged in as the town.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Ian. It's
Sure.
great to have you here.
Yep. Enjoy your meeting.
while he's
Okay.
doing that, something that I just think of is if we're going to take pictures like that, what's the targeted time when there's the most people? So it's a representation of the greatest concern or the concern.
It being a regular walker and cyclist on Pine Street is busy with pedestrian and bike traffic most of the day. There's obviously a lot of people in the morning. There's people around noon, and there's people in the evening. Those seem to be the three, like around or after dinner time. A lot of people are out. We're right off of Pine on Munsell and Pleasant here, so we see people doing the smaller loops as well as the big loop. So but that's a great idea, Kevin, is to catch it
Well, I
when
think
it's
targeting when the school year is in session. Like right now, school's not in session, so you don't have the 3 o'clock traffic or the 8 a.m. traffic.
Oh, you're talking about car traffic.
Right, or just the combination of a
Yeah.
picture showing cars managing the pedestrians.
Yeah.
Or the bikers, that just to show we can fabricate that and create that and put a car image in there, but a real image.
Yep.
And just wipe out the license plate number, block that off, so we're not putting association to who that driver is.
One thing we also might want to do to that end, we're talking about some kind of empirical evidence here, is I wonder if Chief Nason, because he's obviously placed those portable speed limit signs, the radar cameras on most of the streets in Bristol. I wonder if he has any data that those collect as far as like what the average speeds are. Like I'll reach out to him and ask him, because that would be great information to have, to see how fast people are going on Pine Street, especially, around Bristol Works there, where cars have a good head of steam coming from North Street.
I agree. I think it's a good
I'll
point.
reach out and ask, I'll reach out and ask him that. Okay, so I've got a list. It'll be just a list of action steps as far as the, hi Tanya, we see you joined. It's great to have you here, by the way.
Hi, sorry for being late.
No problem. It's great to have you. I'll get a list of action steps relative to presenting a phased approach to this for the select board. We'll circulate it. It's great that Ian commented that he'd be willing to go over that with us prior to actually presenting it. Does anybody have any other comments on on this initiative before we move on? So now we're into other business. I've got a couple things, but I'd love to hear if anybody else has anything to speak to before we move on to that.
I just want to let you know that I too am versed in Photoshop and all things photography. So if you want to reach out before you want to do this fancy presentation, I'm available.
Thank you. It's nice that there's so many Photoshop people. I happen to have been in the graphic design business for the last 25 years. So
Oh, no kidding.
I'm in decent shape with that, but
Okay.
it's great to know. This is awesome that we've got multiple people here that can jump in on that. So other business, I had a couple things related to this, but obviously thinking in terms of a phased approach, we had discussed a few things along the way back in some of our earlier sessions, one of which was attempting to turn the Plank Road intersection there into potentially a four-way stop. I was actually on a ride this morning with a couple friends, one of them from Burlington, another one from the village, and it was interesting. Both of them brought up that they just kind of assumed that should have been a four-way intersection, and it reminded me of the conversation. So that's something that we should be thinking maybe obviously in this big initiative of where that fits, where and how we would bring up something like that, because that would obviously meet some degree of commentary from the greater population, as well as all the people that think that they have a claim to that, people that are going 60 or 65 miles an hour at that point on the road, going in either direction. Another one is I've spoken to the gang at Cool Motion Sports, and they brought up a couple interesting things for us to put in the back of our minds. One is obviously the bike lanes, the shoulder between town and the road up to Lincoln, the town in Rockydale it's there, but it's very narrow. The bike lane there is very precious in its dimensions, and as we all know, traffic there it's serious business at that point, especially as you get out past the Lord's Prayer Rock. Once you're beyond there, you're kind of out where the dragons live as far as the dangers are concerned. And Chris from Cool Motion, who I've invited to come to these meetings, of course, he noted that it would be really interesting for a variety of reasons. One, the number of kids who live out in the mobile home park out in Rockydale, and have to kind of navigate some very kind of gnarly traffic. And two, obviously having some kind of a safer passage out to Bartlett and to the road up to Lincoln would be very fitting with, I think, the way the town sees itself as a bit of a tourist destination and something that's friendly to people who are heading out that way. In this case, certainly town residents who don't necessarily want to drive and have to park their cars up at Bartlett and the various other swimming holes up there and deal with that whole situation. So those three things were brought up in the course of conversations I've been having with people over the last 2 months.
My initial thought for that, I think that'd be a potential initiative for next year, next summer. Obviously takes time to prepare it, put it together. That's a tough topic, Chris. You know, I've lived here my whole life. I started biking up to Bartlett's when I was 10, 11 years old from my parents' house which is right near the New Haven town line.
Yeah.
And it's better now than it has ever been.
That's
And
what I
as you
assumed.
know,
That's what I
there's
assumed.
no space. It's the mountains there. So as Ian was talking about, that's a very expensive project
Yes.
to try
Yeah.
to widen the road there. One side, there's no space because it's the river. The
Yeah.
other side, it's the mountain. And the rock slides and everything.
Yeah.
But don't misunderstand me. I agree with it. I think it's, again, back to my point, that would be a year out or 2 years. I don't
Kevin,
know.
you echoed everything that rattled around in my head when it was brought up. I was like, this is a worthy thing. I have no idea how to solve this. Yeah, it seems beset on all sides by challenges for sure. But I think it's certainly worthy of putting on the long-term plan. You know, if something should ever happen, given that that's a state road at that point, if something should ever happen that they're doing further improvements to it, it would be great to somehow fold something in there, get some kind of a plan folded into that as well. So something to think about.
Okay, I have one further challenge. So there is an old rail bed that went between New Haven and Bristol.
Yes.
And now that they've moved that antique shop / construction company building to the top of New Haven, I would love to imagine a gravel bike lane or trail that went between Bristol and New Haven again. Now that's all private, I'm sure private land that you'd have to get all kinds of permits for and a lot of fundraising, but other towns have done improvements to their trails, so why can't we? And then I would envision that cute little building could be like a stop for snacks or some kind of educational something or other as we move forward.
Marion, fabulous idea. Where is the building? Because the last I saw it, it was in the middle of the field. Right after they had yanked it out of the ground, they had put it up in one of the cornfields, and then it disappeared. Where is it?
It's up by the school.
By the school in New Haven?
Yeah,
Got
it's
it,
on
got it.
North
I
Street.
don't, that's not its final destination either, right?
I heard-
It's still a
It is going
temporary.
to stay up there.
Oh, really?
Whether,
Oh.
yes, it's going, because a friend of mine lives across the street and she was worried about vandalism behind there.
I had
So,
heard
yeah.
I had heard at one point that it might go on the town green there. Is that true?
I don't think
I
so.
heard it
think
was
it's-
going to private property eventually, but it'll be a while.
Fascinating. Okay,
Hmm.
Marianne, fascinating, great idea. I believe, I might be totally wrong with this, but I believe a tiny portion of the rail bed is actually part of the BTN right now.
Okay.
That said, Chris and the gang at Cool Motion have a model now for Cool Mountain, pardon me, have a model now for going and seeking permission for access, and which certainly that's a methodology that was pioneered by everybody from the vast trail networks to all kinds of other the gang up in Burke and the Kingdom Mountain trails and things like that. So you said there'd be work to be done, but it's not new work. It's not work that nobody's done before. And there's absolutely successful models for getting access. And B, we know that like these initiatives really started with people turning these rail beds into these old disused rail beds into pedestrian and bike areas throughout the country. So fabulous idea. Anything else for other business tonight? Okay, I'm not even sure if I technically have to do this because of how we're set up now, Robert's Rules of Order versus quorum and things like that. But motion to adjourn the meeting.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Fabulous.
I second the motion.
I'll take Kevin's as a second. Everyone, thank you so much for joining again. Thanks for your understanding last week with me wanting to have this meeting last week and not on the scheduled date. It's great seeing you all. I'll send along a couple things in the next couple days, and then obviously look for other things in the share. But again, it's great seeing you all, and reach out with anything certainly to the group email.